Hello everyone, welcome to Sunya IAS. This is your ongoing series on NCERT. Okay, and what we are handling is your history subject. So, we in the last session we were already going in detail around lecture number 3, that is Indian states and society in the 18th century. Uh, Society in the 18th century. Okay. Now, in this lecture, most of the things are already done, so I won't be going into too much detail. But before moving forward, I'll summarize some of the things a little bit so that you have some basic ideas of what it is. Okay. Okay. थोड़ा summarization भी हो जाएगा. That will be good for you. So we'll start from there. In the last lecture, we have discussed the 18th century Mughal Empire's disintegration. In the sense, we talked about who were the different small provinces which evolved in the period, and then to be specific, we talked about the Jats, Sikh, Rajput. We didn't went too much inside the details of the bigger states like Bengal, Hyderabad, the Sikh state, and the Mysore, Karnataka, all that, because that has to, Karnataka is already done in the Anglo-French struggle section, and rest of them will be done in the lecture number 4, chapter number 4, as per the old NCERT. But other things like Bangas Pathan, charts, okay, those things have already been discussed. So after that, we went into detail what was happening with the Rajputana region. Okay, we discussed what was happening in Kerala, how Kerala excelled basically during the time of Martanda Varma. Okay, and from there onward, we moved and we talked about the Jats. In the case of Jats also, we talked about the important rulers initially, Churaman and Badan Singh. We talked about the origin of the Jats, that these were basically part of the peasantry, okay, who initially rebelled against the Mughal Empire itself back in 1669 first and then 1688 also. And both the time the reason was excessive demand of the revenue. And these increasing demand of revenue was mostly because of the increasing expenses of the Mughal Empire, because of increasing cost of maintaining Mughal army in the Deccan. Okay, so that much is done. That much we have already done, discussed. Those part is done. Now after that, we have already discussed the Rohilla and Bangas Pathan. I have talked about the closeness of Bangas Pathan and Farrukh Shia. Those things were also done. And in the aftermath of Nadir Shah's invasion of 1739, Ali Muhammad Khan's carved out a territory in Rohilkhand, and we gave you some example of Enemy Property Act and all that. If you remember, and if you haven't, please last lecture, okay, refer to it. Okay. So after that, Awadh 1722, Burhan-ul-Mulk Saadat Khan became Subedar of Awadh. Let's discuss about the economics of the state. And in that section, we talked about that after coming to power, how Saadat Khan used his own money to curb very small issues which were created in the region. Okay, Saadat Khan had to spend from his pocket to curb the rebellion, and then he came up with the fresh revenue system. Now, over here, make sure that you remember that this shows what, because this will be visible in all the sections. Like when we'll be talking about Hyderabad, I'll be mentioning it, that how Nizamul Mulk later in his career evolved a new revenue system for Hyderabad. How in Mysore there was a new revenue system evolved by Hyder Ali. How in Maratha Empire a new revenue system totally different from the lines of Mughals was evolved by the Shivaji, and it was further evolved during the times of Peshwa Shahi. But what I'm trying to focus here is, it is not that the ruling elite back in the 18th century didn't knew that the Mughals had a faulty system. Okay, let me write this thing here. The Mughal elite in 18th century knew that their revenue system was faulty. Okay, and therefore you will see, and we will be covering it separately also, but whenever we'll be starting in the fourth lecture also, story of Bengal, what happened in Maratha Empire and all that, I'll be discussing these things over there also. But here you just keep this thing in mind for a moment, that Bengal, I'm just writing this to show that you remember it. Murshid Quli Khan evolved anew. Uh, Murshid Quli evolved a new, okay, revenue system, and they called it Malguzari. Malguzari system. Okay, so similarly, not only in this, and this is just an example I've just mentioned over there, that in Awadh also Sadat Khan did the same thing. In Hyderabad also the Kitchin Khalij Khan did the same thing. So they knew that there is a fault in the Mughal revenue system. The whole Mansabdari system was not working properly. It was known to all. Okay, that thing has to be kept in mind. It will be usable in the long run. Now, then we focused upon the trade issue, and we discussed in detail in last lecture itself that how trade prospered in the till the 17th century, and what actually led to the decline of trade in the 18th century. And I focused on two things, first of all, and both were related to the decline of the Mughal supremacy and rise of the regional powers. And what were these two things? These two things were, with the rise of regional powers, you will see uh, there were now very many borders in between. With more borders, there were more number of toll taxes, so the prices were increased. As well as with these more toll borders, there were obviously difficulties, hindrances in trade, and along with this, there was also issues of security, because these new small states were kept on fighting among each other. And this is the time when the only organizations who were able to trade within the subcontinent properly were the European organizations, because they were able to carve out or get proper good terms from all the native rulers. Okay, like native rulers अपने जैसे दूसरे लोगों को rights नहीं दे रहे trade करने की, but at the same time they were ready to give trading rights to the European power, and that was happening on a very huge scale. Okay, now Indian villages were mostly self-sufficient. Under Mughals, India imported from Persia, Gulf, all these things we have discussed in the last session. I'm not going to repeat this, although what you have to do is you have to remember these things. Okay, and then we discussed the question over there, also explained it in detail that how this question has to be done. The answer was number 4. Okay, after that we have to start, and this is where exactly we have to start today's class. So let's begin is the social and cultural life in the 18th century India. So let's don't think right now what is written on the screen. Just think for a moment. Social and cultural life. Social and cultural life. Okay, in 18th century India. Okay, social and cultural life in 18th century India. Now, if someone asks you how you think the situation was, so some things it is assumed, or I can presume that you must be knowing, is there was a prevalent caste divide. Okay, now in that caste system itself, you will see the issue of untouchability. Okay, and then even interdining was not allowed. Okay, see about intercaste marriages and all, those were anyway not allowed, but even interdining was not allowed. Okay, now after prevalent caste divide, there was a situation of women. The biggest problem was uh, practices like sati pratha. Okay, sati pratha. Although sati pratha was not prevalent in whole of India, sati pratha was prevalent in Rajputana and Bengal only. Okay, in Bengal and Rajputana, not in the southern India. But there were other problems like uh, widow remarriage was not allowed. Remarriage was not allowed. Okay. Then what else? What are the problem you can think of that must have been there? को पता होगा ना, basic कुछ issues हैं जो you know that they are there in our society from the historical times. Okay, so widow remarriage even in present 21st century sometimes is difficult. There are places in India where it is difficult even in the 21st century. 18th century it was very difficult. Okay, so then polygamy and child marriage. Okay, the most affected by all these problems were the women only. It was not like male were not like part of the child marriage thing, but the major influence or the problems, major crisis situation women used to find themselves because of this. For example, if a 7-year-old girl is married to a 30-year-old man, and suppose the 30-year-old man dies after 10 years. Now the girl is 17, her husband is dead, and she has to live like a widow for the rest of her life, and she's 17. So this is going to create her life very difficult. Okay, the situation will be very abnormal for her from there onwards. So these kind of problems you have to keep in mind. Okay, situation of women done. Prevalent caste divide, situation of women done. Then literacy. Okay, this is also was constrained only for the Brahmin. Constrained for mostly for Brahmins, and among Muslims also only for a very high aristocratic class. The rest of the people were not even allowed. And among the women, so leave it. Like even rare cases, the women were allowed to read and write and participate in the whole literary process. So these are some of the things which were happening on the social level. The cultural effects of this, because this is the foundational thing. How your society is on the foundation, how it's basically preparing it, people will decide the culture of that society. So we'll be talking about it, but just understand this. Let's come to the social and cultural life. So education wise, it was defective, out of touch. Okay, it was defective, out of touch. It was confined to literature, law, religion, philosophy, and logic. There was no presence of science anywhere. Okay, in the whole education process, neither in the Hindu education process or team side, nor in the Islamic education system. Okay, the whole study of physics, physical, nature science, technology, geography, okay, no one was even talking about it. Center of higher education were based on Sanskrit learning and was confined to Brahmins only. And the Persian, being the official language of the state, was equally popular among both Hindus and Muslims, because just like right now English is considered to be the language of the economy. Okay. Similarly, back then Persian was considered to be the important language where using which most of the economic work was done. Okay, so that thing you have to keep in mind. Elementary education, that again I've just told you, among the Hindu, there were village schools, or basically pathshalas kind of a thing. Okay. There were also Gurukul system, but these Gurukul system are different from the one evolved by the DAV system, which evolved later in 1896 onward. Okay, the Gurukul system of the DAV evolved after 1896, so that is a different thing. Okay, this is more based on the ancient system, and there were only few. Among the Muslims, there were Maulvis in the Maktab and then the Markaz. Okay, not Markaz, Maktab. Okay, and then the Maktab is basically, you might have heard about madrasas. So Maktab is a other form, you can say. It's a more of a rude definition, but for just having a raw understanding, you can consider it the other kind of madrasa. Okay. Usually girls remained illiterate only. When it came to social and cultural life, okay, there was no uniformity because of the size of the subcontinent. That uniformity of culture is absent even now, and that is not a very big issue if you have a basic understanding of each other's way of life and all those things. But back then also it was there, and before coming of the Britishers, that was not a very big issue, because in the past also, whether it was the Mughals or the Sultan people, or in the ancient times also, rulers were able to rule very many different ethnicity, people from different culture under single command. So that was possible. Although in the 18th century, there was a huge difference between the life of the upper and the lower caste. Now, this is something you have to keep some focus on, and this is very interesting and very important. And the reason for this is, you need to understand, is people who found themselves in the middle class were usually from the either from the aristocratic background, they have some connection in the nobility, or they were part of the trading community. Okay, so those who were part of the trading community, they were reduced to the lower section, and aristocracy and nobility still maintained their seniority and superiority in the society. And because of the increased corruption, because so much political instability at the top of the affair, who got most benefited? The one who was immediately below. Okay, on the second stage, they got most benefited. Okay, so huge difference, lifestyle of upper and lower class. So these upper class people were the one who got benefited by the instability on the topmost nobility, among the topmost nobility. Okay, so if they got most benefited, all the corruption money was actually going to these people. So you will see that among the erstwhile Mughal aristocracy, there was a sudden rise in taste. Okay, there were small, instead of having a large fort like the Mughal times, there were small forts, small kothis all around. But at the same time, the people who are at the bottommost, they further depreciated. Okay, so what happened is, suppose, or let me make it here. Suppose this is your 1600, this is your 1700, and this is your 1800. Now, between 1600 and 1700, okay, this is your poor people, okay, at this level. This is your poor people, okay. This is your middle class people, okay, which is and this is your aristocratic nobility. And there was difference, no one is denying that there was huge difference. among all the levels. Now what happened is, after 1700, the demand of revenue kept on increasing. And if the demand of revenue is getting increased with each passing day, people on the bottom has to give more money. If they have to give more money, their situation will depreciate. This money will go to the people in the mid. So their situation will appreciate. And there was instability on the top, so their situation also depreciated. Okay, so this divide actually increased. This divide actually increased, and that is what I was trying to tell you, that those in the Mughal society, the middle class, they appreciated hugely. And therefore, if you'll see, in the 1730s, 1740s, 1750s, you will see that there were very many small kothis, which were not a proper fort, which were not a proper palace, but they were far better than anything was available during the time of Humayun and Shah Jahan and even Aurangzeb. But at the same time, the lavishness of the Red Fort was totally gone. And at the same time, the situation of the people on the bottommost strata also was gone. So the only people who appreciated was the Mughal middle class. Okay, so that thing you have to keep in mind. It's not like all Indians. Basic idea kya hota hai? The basic idea is, when the Mughal Empire declined, all Indians started declining. Okay, and when British also rise, all Indians were exploited. No, it is not how it happened. Okay, there were people who supported the rise of Britishers. They kept on enriching themselves. Okay, we will talk about it in more detail in the upcoming lecture. So ये basic फंडा आपका clear होना चाहिए. Okay, fine. So caste regulations. Okay, this thing is clear. Huge difference between lifestyle of upper and lower caste. Caste was a center feature. Hindu society. These things are done. Muslim was okay. Muslim, the whole thing again. Let me explain this thing for those. I hope everyone must be knowing it by now. But if you don't, let me do it again, just one last time. And after this, I hope you'll remember this thing. That even in the Mughal court, there were different type of Muslims. Okay, who were these? The Turanis. Okay, that is who originated from Turkey. Okay, they were called as Turani. They were Uzbeki. They were Kazakh. Kazaki. They were Afghani. They were Irani. And they were Hindustani. Okay, who were native Indians who converted to Islam. Okay, these are just the different kind of Muslims who were there in the Mughal court. And among these also, Iranis were Shias. Okay, so again, from here also there was another Shia Sunni divide. Okay, that divide also existed. So that divide persisted. The Shia Sunni issue, which still exists, used to stay there also. So there was a divide in the Islamic people, Islamic society. Then the Hindustani Muslims who converted to Islam, they took the whole concept of casteism along with them. So since the population of Muslims in India is lesser, you will not find it that visible, even though it exists. But if you go to Pakistan, you will find that caste system is not only present but actually proliferating. Okay, so you can find over there that Hindustani Muslims divided themselves on caste lines, and these castes were in line with their erstwhile religion, that is Hinduism. Okay, so for example, if there is a Dalit person who converted to Islam, it is not that next day he will be allowed to be equal in front of a Turkmen. he will still be treated as a Dalit only. And so there were difficulties in the Muslim society also. Okay. So this one is done. Situation of the woman, again, I have explained this part, but let me just read what is here. The only place in India which was still matriarchal or was Kerala. Okay. And even now, Kerala, the Malayali society is considered a far more matriarchal than patriarchal, as the rest of India is, or rest of whole Indian subcontinent. The thing one has to understand here, matriarchal doesn't mean the ruling elite were females. Matriarchal just means that the line of succession among the men ruler was from female to female. Okay. Now, dowry was practiced Bengal, Rajputana most, but in other places also. Okay. There have been instances, there have been mentions that Bajirao II, the last Peshwa, Bajirao II, the last Peshwa in power, tried his best to curb the difficulties of dowry system. दहेज प्रथा के खिलाफ उन्होंने लड़ाई लड़ी. Now, custom of sati and the conditions of widow were a social evil. I have explained you already. Although this whole sati thing was nowhere to be found in South India, it was only prevalent in North India, and in North India also two specific regions, that is Bengal and Rajputana. Okay, it's not like कि तमिलनाडु में सती प्रथा हो रही है, नहीं, Bengal and Rajputana. ठीक है. Sati used to be the name used in Bengal, and Johar used to be the word used in Rajputana. Okay. So I should write here itself Johar. Okay. Now, widow remarriage was prevalent among non-Brahmins in Deccan, Jats, and hill region of the north. Okay. So even this whole widow remarriage thing was, it's not like no one was letting their woman to remarry if their husband died. It was mostly prevalent in the upper, so-called upper caste. So basically Brahmin and Kshatriyas were the ones who were following it. Rest the people were like, yeah, okay, fine. So that you have to keep in mind. Okay. The Raja of Amber, who later also established Jaipur, Raja Savai Jai Singh, the same Jai Singh, who was the Subedar of Agra in 1722. Okay, he, along with people on a different time, not along with Maratha general Parshuram Bhau, is famous that they were the first to promote widow remarriage. So what will happen in the examination if something like this is used, because this is mentioned in your NCERT and this is mentioned in your new NCERT. Okay, also old mein to hai, new mein bhi likhi. So what happens is, they will, because everyone knows that there is a chapter number 6 or something, where they are talking about the times of Indian Renaissance, when the Indian rationalism and the whole enlightenment thing happened, and people like Raja Ram Mohan Roy took a stance against Sati Pratha, and then you will see that Ishwarchand Vidyasagar took a step for emancipation of women. So along with those people, they will mention the names of Jai Singh of Amber and Parshuram Bhau, and then ask you a question: who among the following took steps to eradicate the menace of Sati Pratha, or to eradicate the menace of, okay, widow, not allowing the widow remarriage? Okay, so over there you have to mention that even these people were there. Basically what happens, because these people were taking steps even before British were anywhere in presence or anywhere in the frame, and therefore their names are usually skipped. So make sure that you know this. Okay, that it's not like the Indian rulers were not knowing the difficulties, or they were not interested in taking steps. They were very much interested. Okay, it is sometime issue that it gets difficult, and sometime they were not able to take enough steps to make everything possible. Okay, although they took steps. Okay, so that's done. yeah, so that is all what was there in your chapter number 3. You can read the question once, and then we'll take a pause of a minute. You pause your screen, read the questions, and then we'll move forward. I'll discuss the questions one by one, and then we'll move forward from there. Okay, you read the questions once, and then we'll move forward. So it's done. You must have seen it. Let me read the questions one by one, and let me answer them also. I'll give you some pointers, and it is expected that you will be answering it on your own. Okay, there are some questions which are mentioned here but are not covered yet. The reason for that is they have to be covered in lecture number 4. The next chapter we are going to start just from here, and I didn't wanted to do it twice, and that's why I have left it. Okay, so you will be able to answer those questions after completing the lecture number 4. Okay, so that's the idea, that's the plan. Let's begin. Let's begin here, and let's go through the questions. Examine the policies followed by the rulers of the states of Hyderabad, Bengal, and Awadh. Okay, what are the policies? So then, because question has been framed such, examine the policies which are taken by the rulers of Hyderabad, Bengal, and Awadh. So there are two ways of doing this thing. Once you can summarize in a single go or steps taken by every one of them, or you can bifurcate or separate each one of it separately and write that what were their pointers. Okay, so what you can best do is, for example, there are certain things which are done by everyone. I have told you that re-establishing, okay, or establishing, or not re-establishing, it should be establishing only. Establishing a new revenue system. Okay, strong action against rebel jagirdars. Okay, these are some things which are done by all three: Hyderabad, Lucknow, or Bengal. Okay, now once that is done, then increasing or making bureaucracy efficient. This is something which was done, and then finally, after that, fourth one, converting province to hereditary subedari. Okay, that is governorship. Hereditary subedari, that is governorship. Okay, so that is done. Okay, sure. So this much is part is done. So this is some of the pointers which you are expected to write here. After this, give a critical appreciation of the character and achievement of the Tipu Sultan. Now I have told you that all the issues regarding Mysore we will be handling after doing chapter number 4. Over there I'll be telling you about the rise of Hyder Ali, also Tipu Sultan. If need be, I will tell you also about the father of Hyder Ali. His name was Fateh Khan. He was from KGF. So अगर आपसे कोई पूछे, so actually there was a character from KGF, that was Hyder Ali, Tipu Sultan. Okay, so we'll be doing it in 4th chapter in much more detail. So अभी के लिए इस क्वेश्चन को थोड़ा सा रुक जाए. I'll come back to these questions, don't worry. I'll come back to these questions after doing the chapter number 4. Okay, there is again Punjab, same thing. We'll be covering it in chapter number 4. Chapter 4, what else? Yeah, bring out the main features of the Indian economic life in the 18th century. What were related to the contemporary political development? Okay, to what extent they were related to the contemporary political development. Now we already have discussed this thing that the economic life of these times were not going very well. The times were very difficult. Okay, people were finding it difficult to trade. The economy had degraded. The trade was devastated because of increased tolls and lack of security on the routes. Okay, as well as lack of security for both the seller and the buyer. Okay, so keeping these things in mind, we can write the Indian economy life was not doing very well. Why it was not doing well? Because of the political instability from the very top of the whole chain. Okay, so that you have to write. Now let's move to the next question. Okay, just give me a moment. Okay, so let's move to the next question. What were the main features of the social life in India? So social life, again, we have discussed in detail. The class divide, the caste divide, the situation of women, the education standards, all these things have to be discussed in the socio-cultural section. So that will be discussed here. Bring out the sum of the differences between the lower and the higher class and caste in the respect. So basically, so lower and higher classes and caste. So both the things, you can, if you want, you can make something of a similar graph which I just made. Okay, you can write it that it is not up to the scale, it's just for the understanding purposes, and it will be acceptable in the exam. Okay, but if you are using any of a graph or something, some plot or something like that, either you give the exact figures or you write there in the plot. That is not up to the scale and just for the understanding purpose. Okay, then discuss the major cultural developments in India in the 18th century. How far were these developments influenced by the nobles, chiefs, and the kings? Okay, so major cultural developments, this is actually very interesting question, and as say we haven't discussed anywhere this thing in the section, and actually we are not going to discuss. So let me explain this thing here itself. Okay, I'll accept that we haven't discussed this thing. So let me discuss it here. So they are basically asking that tell us what happened to the culture in the 18th century. And one thing I have already discussed and told you that India had a very vivid culture back in the 18th century also, because there are so many regions. And this is one place where a lot of appreciation happened. So although the individual handicraft workers and although them, they lost their jobs and all that under the British, but that happened in the 19th century. In the 18th century, cultural evolution actually took place on a much higher scale than before. You will say how this is happening if all the trade and everything is going on decline. How cultural or art wise, how these things are profiting or getting bigger on the scene. So the reason was very simple, because on the map of India, Indian subcontinent, there were new states, okay, popping up every day. Suppose you make a new country of your own. What you need immediately on the first day, you need, or you have to assert your sovereignty, your authority. Okay, these are the basic things you have to do. Suppose if you have to make a country, first thing what you will do, you will assert your authority that I am the owner or I am the king of this country or something like that. So for doing that, you need to have what? A flag, at least a defined map, territory, or, and after that a culture, and that also a vivid culture. VIVID, vivid culture. Okay, not a similar culture, a vivid culture. So suppose you went to some small pahad, some hilly region in Himachal Pradesh, and you took area between four of the hills, and you said this is my new country now. I have 400 guards, I will consider them as army and this is my country. Now to assert, you have a map, you have people also, you have map, you have territory basically, and you have people, both the things between those four pahad of yours. You will also have a flag. चलो कोई नहीं, आपने झंडा बना लिया, बनाने में टाइम लगता है, बना लिया, ऐसे कर लिया, बीच में गोला बना दिया, पैन का झंडा बन गया, ठीक है. अब देखो, but the thing is after that you have to also prove that you have a assertive vivid culture. There is not there. So what you will do, you will hire people from everywhere, you will pay them, you will push them to develop new cultural art, develop culture. So it's like every area already have certain culture. It's not like people don't have culture, but you will try to push them to further develop and propagate the idea of that culture, so that your authority can be ascertained through that cultural presence. Okay, that cultural identity. Okay, so in hope of holding on the cultural identity. Okay, in hope of, understand what I'm saying, in hope of holding on the cultural identity, the rulers of this small newly formed kingdoms in the 18th century invested much more than ever before in the appreciation and propagation of the local culture. Okay, and that is what led to the rise of, you will read in your art and culture section, pahadi painting, okay, kangdi painting. Okay, small areas have this extravagant ways of painting. जैसे कि सर कंट्री की आबादी है 20 लाख, 50 लाख की, तो उन्होंने पेंटिंग बनवा दी. ओके, इनकी कंट्री में लोग भूख से मर रहे थे और ये अपने घर में एक पेंटिंग बनवा रहे थे, उस पर सोने की जड़ियाँ लगवा रहे थे. So this was happening because for them cultural identity was important, and to a certain cultural identity they need to something to portray in front of the people. Okay, so that's why it was important, and that's how this question is framed also. They discuss the major cultural development in India in the 18th century. So when it comes to cultural development, the basic idea समझ में आ गया. Now what are the base cultural which developed in this times? Understand Nizam Shahi. Okay, Nawab Shahi. Don't write Rajputana because Rajputana was there from the 11th century itself. It was there from the 11th century AD. So you don't have to write Rajputana in the 18th century. Nizam Shahi is in Hyderabad. Okay, they had a influence of Turkish origin and Persian origin. Turkish and Persian origin. Okay, Nawab Shahi, this was in Awadh. This, they have origin in Persian origin. Okay, now Rohilla Afghans, by name itself, around the area of Rampur and Bareilly. Okay, their influence was basically Afghan. Okay, so you can also say Pashtun. Okay, so that these were the culture which got into prominence in this time, dissociating themselves from the Mughals. Okay, beyond this, in the 18th century, you will also saw the rise of Mysore. Okay, and also in Bengal, and this is under Murshid Quli Khan. The dynasty was Nasiri dynasty. This thing is not mentioned in your NCERT book. Okay, so I'm just mentioning it outrightly. It's not there in your NCERT. Make sure if you want you can note it down, but it's not there in your book. Okay, so Mysore, we will discuss Mysore in detail in Hyder Ali. Somewhere it is written Hyder, H-A-I-D-E-R. Somewhere it is written H-Y-D-E-R, Hyder. Whatever spelling you prefer, you can write. Okay, so I'm not giving too much detail about Mysore because it has to be covered in chapter 4, but rest of them you can write. These are the cultures or cultural identity which evolved in the 18th century India. Okay. Now, briefly, examine Hindu-Muslim relations in the 18th century. To what extent were politics of the 18th century motivated by the religious considerations? Now, I have taught you in detail that if you see, you will find that in the 18th century, uh, Hindu-Muslim unity didn't sustain on, and one of the basic prime reason you will find in the 17th century itself, with the reimposition of jizya and subsequently the Teeth Yatra Masood. Okay, that divide increased, and following in the 18th century, when the demand of revenue got increased, the first sanction or first imposition was on the majority community, which was Hindu, and they many a time considered it be uh, done by people of different religion. So that Hindu-Muslim divide increased with the increasing difficulty of the Mughal Empire. Although in the regions, among the regional powers, this divide was not as severely observed. Okay, so you will see that Hindu-Muslim divide will only arise in the region, or you will hear about Hindu-Muslim divide from only those regions which were in economic distress. Otherwise, there will not be any of the Hindu-Muslim divide thing. Okay. Now, this is the last question, I think so. Yeah. So you have to write some short notes kind of a thing, and it is expected of you to write at least like 50 words. But I will suggest that you write at least 100, because if you prepare for 100, you will be able to write 50 for sure. Okay. So Raja Jai Singh of Amber. So first of all, what you need to, I'll just go through it one by one. What you know about Raja Jai Singh? The first thing, he is the one who established Jaipur, the inner town, Pink City, downtown Jaipur, Pink City. Okay, Jai Singh. Jai Singh was there. He was made the governor of Subedar of Mewar, and not only Mewar, he was made the governor Subedar of even Agra. And all the riches of Jaipur actually came from the Subedari of Agra, which was the ancient capital of the Mughals. Okay. Jai Singh in his own right was a shrewd politician, and also he was a astronomer. Okay, so there are these 5 bhool bhulaiyas. Okay, Jantar Mantar, not bhool bhulaiyas, those are different. 5 Jantar Mantar around India and North India. Okay, so those are established by him. Basically, these are astronomical observatories were made by him and from his own funds. So while he was the Subedar, he did all that. Fine. So though that thing you can write. The third battle of Panipat. So you can write about the Marathas' involvement. Okay. Then you can write about the loss of the victory of Ahmad Shah Abdali and its impact, long-term impact, and as well as immediate impact. Immediate impact, you can write the total loss of control of the Mughal Empire on Delhi and nearby region, and subsequently the loss of Battle of Buxar, because actually the Battle of Buxar was the attempt made by Shah Alam II in the aftermath of Battle of Plassey to win over what has been lost for the Mughals, that is the credibility of authority. Okay, so that you can write down. Hyder Ali, exactly, I told you that we will be covering it in chapter number 4 and lecture 4, and then I'll tell you. Kerala in the 18th century, we have discussed this thing that there were 4 sections, okay, 4 areas. By 1729, Travancore remained the most powerful. Beyond that, Cochin was also there. Calicut under Zamorin was gone because Hyder Ali attacked it, and with Travancore also, Mysore had a crisis by 1790s. Although Travancore in after the third Anglo-Mysore, I'm just telling you that this will be covered in your chapter 4, but and then you will be able to write more about Travancore. After 1792, Travancore entered basically understanding which is based similar to subsidiary alliance. Those who don't know about subsidiary alliance, wait. Okay, we will be discussing again. This is the thing, or let me do this Travancore thing also after 4th chapter, because there are just too many things if you want to write about Kerala in detail. Jat, Surajmal. About Surajmal, you have to write about the initial reasoning, how the peasants stood against the Mughals in 1669 and 1688. Again, you can mention that, and you can write how after 1640 Bharatpur established 1740 Bharatpur tried to establish itself as a Jat ruled kingdom, and it worked for some time well. Okay. Education in the 18th century, you will be able to, I just explained it few minutes back. Science in the 18th century, the situation was bad. You can explain economic conditions, that also we have discussed just few minutes back in detail. So I hope these questions you will be able to tackle without any problem. So do that. If you face any issue, any problem, you can get in touch and we will resolve it. Fine. Let's move forward and let's begin the next lecture from here. And that is the British conquest of India. Okay, so we'll take a pause of a minute or something, and then we'll move forward from here. Okay, just read the screen, take the chapters, and we will start from here. Okay, let's start the lecture number 4. That is British conquest of India. Now, usually it is thought that whole modern history is about the British conquest of India, but modern history is not only British conquest of India, but have already been taught that it is also about the decline of the Mughals. Until now, we have only covered decline of the Mughals as well as the entry of the Europeans. Now, among the Europeans, in lecture number 2, we discussed about that how among the Europeans, the British succeeded as the supreme power. Okay, among the Europeans, British succeeded as the supreme power, and then they went on to succeed and become the master of Indian subcontinent. So this lecture, which is basically your old NCERT Bipin Chandra's chapter number 4. Now there is very interesting something about this chapter. There has been no question asked from this chapter directly in your prelims examination in last 9 years. This is the longest chapter, and you will never be able to understand anything about the Indian history, Indian modern history, unless and until you have done this chapter. So this is the most important chapter, without which you will not have any grasp on modern Indian history, which have not been given importance by UPSC directly. Indirectly, questions have been framed, have been continuously being framed from there here. Whether you are writing anything in GS paper 3, whether you are writing anything in polity answer, whether you are writing in ethics, whether you are writing in essay, optional, depends whatever your subjects are. But understanding of this chapter is essential. But UPSC hasn't asked any direct question past 9 years from this. That is also a reality. So let me tell you that outrightly, because this is the longest chapter. There might be 2 or 3 parts of this. This chapter number 4 won't be covered in a single lecture. It will take at least 3 lectures to cover this chapter. Okay. And almost a hour of this lecture has already been done. So I'll just introduce this lecture and then we'll end. And then we'll start from there in the next lecture. So let me tell you this, that British conquest of India is a very interesting thing. Okay. And what exactly we have to read in here. So there are 4 important Indian provinces about whom we have to learn: Bengal, Mysore, Marathas, and Sikh. What happened in Bengal? How Bengal came in control of the Britishers? What happened in Mysore? How Tipu Sultan lost and how Mysore went into the hands of the Britishers? What happened in the Maratha Empire? Marathas, the mighty Marathas, who were ready to fight Aurangzeb, okay, who had almost succeeded to become the supreme authority in Indian subcontinent in 1760. How they, after 1760, in next 58 years, lost power completely and became a subsidiary partner of the Britishers in 1818. Okay, this will be discussed here. And then we'll also be discussing what happened with the Sikh. There was a Sikh empire under Ranjit Singh. Okay, Maharaja Ranjit Singh lasted between 1799 and 1849. Although Ranjit Singh died in 1839 itself, 10 years after his death, and 2 Anglo-Sikh wars, British Sikh wars, the Sikh handed over the power into the hand of the British. What happened there? How it all happened and what could have been done other way around, that also we'll discuss. So now this is more of a story part. This is actually the classic history chapter, okay, which many a times feel like, "Arey sir, ye to puri kahani ho gayi movie ki." Okay, this is that section, and this has to be done properly. So let's begin. Let's do this. East, first of all, we are discussing about Bengal. So in the map of India, you can see where Bengal is. Okay, so I don't have to make a separate map. You can see very easily, this is Bengal. It's written here. Okay, and over here is Kolkata, where Fort William was there, and I have taught you in chapter number 2 that Fort William was made in 1700 and was only with the permission of Aurangzeb in 1790. 3 villages were allowed to be sold to the Britishers, and 1200 rupees the Britishers paid, and then only that area was given to them: Govindpuri, Sutnauti, and Kalikatta. And over there they established their factory, Fort Williams, which later on became the capital of British India. Okay, so this is the map of Bengal, first of all. Okay, this is a map from somewhere in 1740. Okay, so what we have to discuss about in Bengal, first of all, let me make you understand this thing. We will be dividing the whole Bengal story into 3 parts. The first part is the proto-industrial stage. Even before the coming of, this is what was done, this particular first part is the part of chapter 3 of your old NCERT. That is before the coming of the Britishers also, when Mughal Subedar Murshid Quli Khan was ruling Bengal, he took some steps which made Bengal a efficient and profitable state. Okay, it was not like it was losing money only, it was actually making profit. It was generating a lot of revenue it was actually generating 40% of the whole revenue of the Mughal Empire in 1710. Okay, so what steps he actually took, what he did, such things, what all things he did which made it possible. Okay, so that we will be discussing here. Then we'll be discussing about the Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar. Okay, so this is what has to be done. Officially stating, UPSC says that everything which happens in Bengal between 1720 and onwards has to be discussed. We'll go a bit before also to give you a better background. That's it. Okay, there will be certain things which I'm telling you here is not there in NCERT, but I think to have an understanding of what is written in that book, you need to have to know these things. Otherwise, वो पढ़ोगे और ऐसा लगेगा कि ये क्या लिखा क्या है. Okay, so first of all, as you can see in the map, okay, this is your Nizam Shahi, that is Hyderabad. This is your Maratha Confederacy. Why it is called a confederacy here is not of your concern. We will be coming to that issue later on. This whole yellow part is Maratha. Okay, this region. Okay, this whole part is Maratha. Okay, this is Awadh. This is Bengal. Okay, Jats, Rajput, dominion of Nizam. Now, if keeping these things in mind, we'll see that who are the stakeholders in Bengal. In the affairs of Bengal, who are the major stakeholders? Okay, that we have to look. Just give me a moment. So if we have to just look that who are the stakeholders in Bengal, understand this thing that ultimately Mughals are the supreme lord. ठीक है, for a timing they are not the authority on the ground, but effectively they are, because at least not effectively, but to say for official purposes they are. So Mughal are our authority. Bengal Suba under Murshid Quli. I have already told you that Murshid Quli have been given the hereditary Subedari in 1717 by Farrukh Shiar. Okay, so that discussion has already been done. I hope you know this thing. Okay, so Bengal Suba is under Murshid Quli Khan. Murshid Quli Khan. Okay, then their Marathas are there because they are someone who are they are kept on trying and raiding the border territories of the Bengal. Okay, and they kept on doing that till 1760s. Okay, so Marathas were a stakeholder. English East India Company was a stakeholder. Dutch East India Company was a stakeholder. I am mentioning this. French East India Company, although present in Chandan was not a stakeholder in the story in Bengal. Okay, understood? French East India Company is there in Bengal, but they didn't participate in any of the issues. They were just working as a trading company. In Bengal, the other European company which got involved into the political affairs was the Dutch East India Company. Okay, what happened? I will tell you. Just understand what I'm telling you right now, this much. Okay, so there were basically 5 stakeholders, main stakeholders in 1740s, 1750s Bengal. Let's discuss first what is this proto-industrial stage. Now, everyone, before coming to this, let me tell you this, that everyone must be knowing industry. Okay, industry सबको पता है. Okay, एक फैक्ट्री होगी. Okay, फैक्ट्री के अंदर एक मशीन होगी. ओके, मशीन पे काम करने वाला एक लेबर होगा. ओके, मशीन से जो निकलेगा वो प्रोडक्ट होगा. मशीन के अंदर जो जाएगा वो रॉ मटेरियल होगा. ओके, this much everyone knows, or I should do it like this. लेबर भी एक तरह से अपने आप को खपा ही रहा है. ओके, सो with the input of labor and raw material, machine converts something into product. That machine is in a factory, and this whole system is industry. If this is done on huge level, everywhere, on a generic mass level, okay, for everything, for food, for clothes, for shoes, okay, for everything around you, then it is a revolution on its own. And so is the industrial revolution. Okay, this is the most basic definition. कुछ नहीं आता है, इतना तो पता है भाई, इतना तो आता है. There is a machine. मशीन में क्या लगता है? मशीन में लगता है रॉ मटेरियल, मशीन में लगता है लेबर, आउटकम होता है प्रोडक्ट. मशीन इज इन फैक्ट्री, फैक्ट्री इज इन अ इंडस्ट्री. If there are just too many of industries for everything, is a industrial revolution. Okay, जैसे IT revolution है, because everything is done by IT. Okay, there is a phone telephonic revolution, it's mobile revolution, everything is done on your phone. Okay, so industrial revolution. Now this is the most raw definition which I could have given you to explain you the basics of industrial revolution. Now what is actually industrial revolution happened and where it happened? Before going anywhere in detail, this is something you will be we will be covering it in more detail in world history, because we'll be talking about what happened in Britain. But in the 18th century Britain, okay, not even in the 17th, in the 18th century Britain, you will see that all of a sudden, with the coming of steam engine, okay, and that technology to convert steam energy into mechanical energy, with the coming of this technology, machines were almost used for anything, and the overall productivity was better than human being, and so everything was being getting automated. With this process of automatization, sometimes happens with faculties also. Okay, with the whole process of automatization, what happened is the process of making things with hands became costly, and the industrial process became cheaper. So the same cloth, if a human being making by hand, it will take more time, it will cost you more than if it's done by a machine. Okay, although the raw material beyond labor is everything same, that is, the raw material is anywhere cotton, mostly cotton or silk or whatever cloth you are using for making your shirt. Now people in India were making not shirt as say, but wearable items for upper body and lower body, different types, okay, were getting made in India, but these things were usually handmade. Now when European countries, or to be specific, when Britain came up with this industrial revolution, they started production at a higher rate, and therefore they needed raw material at a higher rate. So they started importing products from India. They started importing raw material from India and raw material from America also. And so it became difficult for Indians to get raw material sometime, or the prices of raw material also rise. But all these things came later, after 1750, 1760. In 1710, 1720, 1730, what Indian did, or to be very specific, what Bengal did, is without the use of this machine, Bengal evolved a system where the productivity increased. Here the productivity is getting increased because of use of machine. Okay, so when machine is used in the industry, it is called as industrialization. Okay, but without a machine, if efficiency has increased, transparency has been increased, because of that the work overall productivity has grown, it is usually referred to as the proto-industrial stage. That it has not gone to that industrial stage yet, but without that also it has somewhat achieved better than what other people have. So it's proto, it's not pre, it's not previous, okay, it's proto. Okay, And so Bengal found itself in the proto-industrial stage. Okay, proto-industrial stage. Now, for those students who are still a bit confused, let me explain what is and how proto-industrial stage is defined. Okay, so there are three things which has to be there for a particular society to be considered in a proto-industrial stage. What is that? First is your agriculture has to be commercialized. Okay, ऐसा नहीं है कि अगर आप you are growing wheat और फिर रोटी बना के खा जा रहे हैं. Okay, that should not be there. Whatever commodity you are producing as a farm product has to be sellable. It has to have a commercial value. Wheat is also fine, but then the amount, the quantity of wheat has to be such that after your personal use, you have surplus to sell it in the market and get some monetary worth. Okay, so commercial agriculture is important, is an important characteristic of proto-industrial stage. Then rural handicraft product for external market. Okay, so what? We are not producing our machine, our stuff, our material, our goods to machines, but they are getting produced anyway, and they are getting good prices also in market, and that also external market, that is foreign market. So that is there. So basically your product are earning you money. And the third is mode of production. Okay, it has to be non-mechanized. Explain you, the absence of machine is very important to explain the whole thing of proto-industrialization. Okay, absence of money is very important, absence of machine is very important. Okay, if all these three things are there, you can say a particular society is in proto-industrial stage. Okay, now Bengal, how the hell Bengal found itself into this situation? Because all the stories you must have heard कि भाई वहाँ तो मतलब famine आता था, भूखे मर जाते थे, 1/3 population मर गई. On that, that population never died. Is the story goes like that in 1770s famine came and 1/3 of the population of Bengal either died or left Bengal. Okay, it's not like 1/3 people died, most of them left because there was no food. But still almost 15 to 16% people actually died. That itself is a huge. Fine. So how these people reach proto-industrial stage? Now let's first you understood this thing. If you want to make a note of this, write it down. The characteristic feature of proto-industrial stage: commercial agriculture. Okay, sellable handicrafts for the external market, and mode of production has to be non-mechanized. Make a note, write it down. Okay, take a minute and write it down, and then we'll move forward. Okay, now it happened because of Murshid Quli Khan. So Murshid Quli Khan did something different from the erstwhile Subedars. So what he did, okay, that's what we have to discuss. Now Murshid became, or let me tell you a few things about Murshid which is not mentioned in this much detail in your NCERT, although some things are mentioned. So Murshid's actual name was Muhammad Hadi. First of all, not even that, let me start from here. His real name was Surya Narayan Mishra. Okay, then he converted to Muhammad Hadi at the age of 10. Okay, he was sold into slavery, went with a trader to Baghdad, learned the trade of accountancy, came back. After his owner, his master died, he became free, and in while he was posted as a like a standard job in Deccan, while Aurangzeb was a Subedar, a governor in Deccan, he saw him, he got impressed, and so in 1697, when, and this, just understand this thing as a part of a story, okay. In 1697, when Aurangzeb was in dire need of money, okay, and Bengal was the richest state, it was expected that Bengal will earn the maximum revenue. Like for example, right now Maharashtra earn the maximum revenue for government of India. Back then Bengal used to earn the maximum revenue for Mughal Sultanate. So in 1697, Aurangzeb was fighting a war against the Marathas in Deccan, and he needed money. So what he did, he looked toward Bengal, and in Bengal, his grandson, Aurangzeb grandson, Azim-o-Shan, okay, Azim-o-Shan was the governor, Subedar. So under Azim-o-Shan, he appointed Muhammad Hadi as a Diwan, that is finance minister, okay, finance minister, and told him that handle the stuff. Now Muhammad Hadi was excellent at handling accounts, but the problem was Azim-o-Shan was not excellent. He is a corrupt guy, and so he started creating difficulties for Muhammad Hadi. And so he complained to Aurangzeb, and Aurangzeb told him that you shift your capital or shift your office, the office of the finance ministry, okay, that is Diwani office, to some other place. So the capital then was, Bengal's capital was Dhaka, okay. Diwani was shifted to a place called as Maqsoodabad. Okay, this is just a story. This much is not written in your book. I'll tell you from where the book has told. Now, staying in Maqsoodabad, he ran the show very well. Okay, he, by the 1700, within 3 years, after 3 years, in 1700, he provided Mughal Sultanate 40% more than what was expected. Not what was Azim-o-Shan was giving. No, what was expected of him, considering he was expected to anyway earn more. He gave 40% even more than that to the Mughal Sultanate as the overall revenue collected. So Aurangzeb was so impressed by him that Aurangzeb gave him the title. Now this Muhammad Hadi got a title of Murshid, and he was given the title of Murshid Quli Khan, okay, and he was even told that this city where his Diwani was, Maqsoodabad, it should be renamed as Murshidabad. Should be renamed as Murshidabad after Murshid Quli Khan. So it was called Murshidabad. Okay. Even so much so that Aurangzeb, by 1703, when he started giving him more revenue, he said, you are right actually, and you can even more be better if Azim-o-Shan is not there, because Azim-o-Shan was corrupt. So Aurangzeb removed Azim-o-Shan, his own grandson, and appointed Azim-o-Shan's son, Farrukhsiyar, the same Farrukhsiyar who later became the emperor, Farrukhsiyar, as the Subedar. Now at this time Farrukhsiyar was only 10-year-old, so it was expected that everything was on ground, everything will be done with this Murshid Quli Khan only, Muhammad Hadi only, and Farrukhsiyar will be there just as the nominal Subedar, because he is from the bloodline of Aurangzeb. Good. Everything went very well between 1703 and 1707 till Aurangzeb was alive. When 1707 Aurangzeb died, okay, 1707 Aurangzeb died, and you know, I've already told you that Bahadur Shah became the new emperor. And now that Azimoshan, or who has been removed by Aurangzeb, was actually, he was the person who became the crown prince. Now just imagine, आपने न्यूज में देखा होगा, there is a person called as MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. He is the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. What his stature is, what his power is, so you can understand what crown prince means. So that Azimoshan, who was removed from the position of Subedar by Aurangzeb, now became the crown prince of Mughal empire. So what he did immediately, this Muhammad Hadi, this Murshid Quli Khan, was kicked out of his office of Diwani, and he appointed himself again as the Subedar of Bengal, and started doing exactly what he used to do before 1697, when Murshid Quli Khan first was appointed as the Diwan. Right. This thing went on and on. Azimoshan was also killed, and that story I have already narrated you. The case of Jahandar Shah, that there was a quarrel between Jahandar Shah and Azimoshan, that who will become the emperor after the demise of Bahadur Shah. In 1713, when Farrukh Shiar came to power, Farrukh Shiar realized that look, Bengal used to be the most economically dominant state province of Mughal Empire. It is not giving us as much revenue as we expected. And so he asked that although I don't remember much, I was a kid, but still I remember some part. And there was this guy who was handling stuff very well. Where is he? He was told that he is no more here, and this happened. Sir, आपके पापा ने भगा दिया उसको. Okay, your father has actually removed him. So Farrukh Shiar gave the orders, and Murshid Quli Khan was brought back from Deccan. And this time, instead of being a Diwan, he was appointed as the Subedar, complete Subedar. So in 1713, Farrukh Shiar appointed Murshid Quli Khan as the Nawab Nazim. That's the official position of Bengal. Basically, that's Nawab only. लिखने का तरीका है, ठीक है? Nawab Nazim of Bengal. Okay. So good, great. Now he started working very well. In 1717, I told you that Farrukh Shiar gave the famous golden farman in favor of Britishers. So at the same time, I'm telling you that Murshid Quli is an intelligent man. He's an accountant himself. So in 1717, Murshid Quli was expecting that अभी मैं Britishers से और पैसे, okay, that Shah Suja wala जो declaration है, that 3,000 rupees has to be paid, and in 1651 it was declared. I have taught you in the second chapter that 3,000 rupees has, in 1651, Aurangzeb's brother, while being the Subedar of Bengal, has told the East India Company that you pay 3,000 rupees annually and do all the trade you want in whole of Bengal. And then Farrukh Shiar in 1717, in hope of getting a European ally on his side, because he was losing support in his court, he allowed the Britishers to carry on the trade in Bengal with that same 3,000 rupees amount, and also allowed them to mint coins in Bombay fort of theirs. In retaliation to this, Murshid was very unhappy, very upset. And then Farrukh Shiar also needed to have Murshid on his side, because he was also an important ally. He also had money. मान लो अगर मुर्शिद भाग गया, पैसे उसके पास हैं, he supports anyone else from Farrukh Shiar's family, that person now comes with another army and kills Farrukh Shiar only. So hoping that Murshid Quli keeps on helping Farrukh Shiar, in 1717, immediately after Golden Farman in favor of East India Company, Farrukhsiyar also gave, not also should be, gave hereditary सूबेदारी to Murshid. So he needed Murshid on his side. What he will do now? He was like, okay, fine, you take this. So he gave this hereditary Subedari to Murshid Quli Khan. Now Murshid have hereditary Subedari. Okay, so that is done. So that's where Murshid got the hereditary Subedari. That part of the story is done. ओके अब वो कंफ्यूजन नहीं होना चाहिए कि सर क्यों दे दी, क्या ज़रूरत है, क्यों बना दिया हेरिडिटरी सूबेदार. एंड फ्रॉम हियर ऑनवर्ड मुर्शिद established his own dynasty called as Nasiri dynasty. Okay, Nasiri dynasty. Fine, done. Now Murshid died in 1727. Few things I am telling you. Murshid died in 1727. Murshid's son died in 1737. Then his son's family, and then that after 2 generations in 1739, Ali Wadi Khan, who was a general in Murshid's son's court, killed the lineage of, ended the lineage of Murshid by killing his grandson and hence coming to power. Okay, so that story will come in a minute, but before that you need to understand that what Murshid did while he was in power, because ultimately that is what he is required. So he brought changes on the political level, he brought changes on the economic level, and he also brought changes in the social level. Okay, so effectively he was the Subedar from 1713 till 1717, and from 1717 onwards he was the hereditary Subedar. So in a way he was autonomous ruler, in a way he was a sovereign only of Bengal between 1717 and 1727. So around 1720, what changes he brought in Bengal, that is the focus. That is something which you have to keep in your mind all the time. जितनी स्टोरी बताई है वो भूल जाओ, कोई बात नहीं. This has to be remembered. So political changes, economic changes, and social changes. So first of all, what he did, he resolved the Maratha issue. Okay, he had an understanding, he reached an understanding with the Maratha Peshwa. Okay, he reached an understanding with Maratha Peshwa Bajirao first and resolved the issue. He paid some money to the Marathas to making sure that Marathas don't attack the borders of Bengal, Suba, in present day Odisha and nearby region. Then he also became the hereditary Subedar, so that was an important political change. On social level, he provided stability, security for all his subjects, maintained secularism as his basic principle, and handled droughts very well, because all these droughts are only something which over the period, if not handled, if not tackled over a period of 1 or 2 years, converts into famine. Okay, ऐसा नहीं होता कि एक दिन में सूखा पड़ा और भूखे मर गए लोग. जब कई दिन तक भूखे रहोगे तब भूखे मरोगे. Okay, so he handled the drought very well at his time. Okay, making sure that the drought of Bengal in 1720s don't get converted into large famines, which happens finally in the British rule in 1770. Okay, now on the economic front, what he did, he increased the revenue collection by Mal Zamini system, and I'll explain you what Mal Zamini system is. He kept the European companies in check, provided 40% of the total Mughal revenue at that time. Okay, so all these important things he did. Now, what is Mal Zamini system? That is essential. Let me explain that thing. Mal Zamini system. Now, I have told you that after 1712, Zulfikar Khan the Wazir in court of Jahandar Shah, the Prime Minister in court of Jahandar Shah, has or applied the infamous Izaradari system. Okay, Izaradari, and I have explained in the lecture, in the initial lecture, that in the Izaradari system, it's more like a IPL bidding. Okay, everyone has been called. तुम कितना collect कर लोगे ज़मीन से, how much you can collect from that property, how much you can collect from that property in form of revenue. Whoever says that he will collect the maximum amount as revenue from a particular property, that property is given to that person for revenue collection. Now, in expectation of landing up the job of collection, everyone starts quoting unexpected numbers, okay, unexpected amount, and effectively while they are trying to get that much amount from the peasantry, from the farmers, exploitation is going to take place. Okay, but there was one more level of corruption even. What? So what used to happen is this. This is your central Mughal authority. Okay, this is your state Mughal authority. Okay, and this is your Izaradar. Okay, now suppose this Izaradar have assured in the initial stage. In the initial stage, this Izaradar has assured that he will provide how much. We will write two sides. We will write initial on this side and then final on the other side. Okay. So in the initial stage, this Izaradar has assured that he will collect 1 lakh rupee as revenue from a particular piece of land. Okay, and he will give that 1 lakh rupee to the state, the Suba. Okay, the Mughal Suba. The Mughal Suba will then transfer 50,000 rupees to the central government. Okay, 50,000 for their own expense, and then they'll transfer the 50,000 to the Delhi. Okay, that is, suppose this was the funda. This is the most basic thing I can explain. In actuality, what happened? He knew that collecting 1 lakh rupees is impossible. 4 लोग तो काम कर रहे हैं, मार के जान भी ले लूंगा अगर उनकी, तो भी बेचारे 1 लाख रुपए तो नहीं दे पाएंगे. Or effectively, I will maximum I can get is 20,000 rupees. Okay. Now, if actually he can get 20,000 rupees, he can't give 20,000 rupees. He will be jailed. Okay, because he has assured 1 lakh rupees. So what he will do? He will now, there is a Subedar in the state. So he will tell the Subedar that, look, I will give you 10,000 rupees. Okay. And you write in your report that drought happened. Some issue came in, some natural calamity happened, and because of that, no revenue was collected. So there will be revenue 0. There will be revenue 0. But the Subedar will get 10,000 rupees and Izaradar will keep remaining 10,000 for himself. Okay. This is what they used to do. This was the basic idea of how they did the corruption. Okay. And that's why you needed an important, transparent official at the state level to make sure that these kind of corruption don't happen. Because where the central government was expecting 50,000 rupees and they are getting 0. Where the state government was expecting to get also 50,000, because after 1 lakh, in 50,000, half of it, and they are getting 0. Who are getting benefit? The Subedar in his personal capacity and the Izaradar on the ground. So this whole system was transformed by Mal Zamini system. So what was done in Mal Zamini system? Let me explain it here. Suppose the Izaradar committed 1 lakh rupee. So immediately he was told that you give something as a property or something as a security. Okay, just like you go for a bank loan right now, you give something security. So they were forced to give something in security, which was worth at least 1 lakh rupee. And they were told if they will not generate 1 lakh rupee by the end of the year, okay, that property will be gone. So this whole idea of collusion or doing anything in the mid-level was totally gone, and because of this security thing, and the security was basically called as the mal zamini, because zameen is a Persian, zameen is actually not a word for land. Zameen is a Persian word for security, because land is considered from the historical times the most secure asset. It has become synonymous with zameen. Okay, zameen is not a word which is actually meant to be land. Okay, that's how you need to know. So mal zamini system, in that's where the mal zamini system came in, and this was a brainchild of, or you can say this was first used by, okay, Murshid Quli Khan in Bengal, and this provided the initial economic support which he needed to provide further boost to the economy. Okay, whether paying off, which I explained you na in the social side, whether paying off Baji Rao, okay, first of the Maratha Empire, making sure that he don't keep on invading the border areas of Bengal, or keeping the tax low in the real drought prone area. Those things he was able to do, or even increasing the status and bringing Bengal in the proto-industrial stage. For that, he needed the initial financial source, and that initial financing source was brought in by the mal zamini system. Okay, so that you can make a note, right? Okay, so got it? समझ में आ गया ये? Sure. So just make a note of this, and then we will move forward. Okay. Now this is done. Fine. So we have to move now with the reign of Siraj-ud-Dawla. And since the reign of Siraj-ud-Dawla and all is actually very interesting topic, but it has to be done in a single go. And since class has been already been almost more than 1.5 hours, I don't want to stretch it any further. We will do right from here in the next session. Okay, we'll start with Siraj's story, and I'll keep on explaining what Siraj did, how it happened, what actually led to Battle of Palasi, what things happened in the prelude before Battle of Palasi, what were the consequences of Battle of Palasi, what changed the whole situation, led to Battle of Buxar, and then effectively ended the whole control of Bengal Suba in hand of Britishers. So those things we'll discuss in the next lecture. Okay, so I hope till proto-industrial stage of Bengal you have learned in today's class. Okay, that will be all for this section lecture, and let's catch up in the next lecture. We'll start right from here. Okay, thank you and have a nice day. Thank you.